Oh, there she is. Tired.
Travel Committee, February 24th, Senator Guru, Senator Landon,
Here.
Senator Salazar,
Here.
Senator Schuler, Madam Chairman Ellis.
Present. The first bill on our agenda is House Bill 43, Trophy Game, Big Game, and Wild Bison License Allocation. Committee members, you should be familiar with this bill. It is a bill sponsored by the TRW Committee. So I don't think we need to walk through it. I think we're all familiar with what it does. Let's just jump in with some public testimony. Recall that we, last year, there was an effort by our Game and Fish Department to lead a task force. And one of the issues that they brought to us was this bill. So with that, I defer to Director Nesvik from Game and Fish. Explain to us where we are and what we need to be knowing with this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Nesvik, Director, Wyoming Game and Fish. I'm joined here today by our licensing manager, Jennifer Doring, and also our Chief of Fiscal, Greg Phipps. As you pointed out, Madam Chair, this is something that this committee's seen before. It moved through the House and it was amended in a couple ways on the House floor. But just as a quick reminder, the two primary objectives that the task force sought to achieve with this bill was, first of all, to change the allocation of resident and non-resident licenses for what is now termed the Big Five species, the hardest to draw species in the state, from an allocation that's varied right now to an allocation of 90% 90% resident, 10% non-resident. The second objective of this bill was to change the opportunity to draw those licenses from what's currently now a requirement for a 5-day or a 5-year waiting period after you draw to making these licenses so you could only draw them once in a lifetime. The task force approved this recommendation unanimously. I'm joined today by several task force members. Chairman Flitner is here. She serves on that task force. Commissioner Lee Livingston is here. I believe that we also have online potentially one of our co-chairmen. I think that Commissioner Rusty Bell may be online. And then we've also got Joe Schaefer here, who's a sportsman and familiar to most of the folks on this committee as well, from Laramie County Community College. There were some amendments on the House side, and then I have had the staff pass around a couple of additional amendments that I can walk through whenever you're ready, Madam Chair, for today. Mainly we caught one slight error that was contradictory to what the task force had recommended. It's kind of a subtle change, but I can talk through that. And then also some conforming language that we believe needs to be changed based on amendments that were made on the House floor. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to answer any questions or go into more detail on this bill and the work of the task force.
Thank you. Before I open this up for questions for Director Nesvik, I did hand out LSO, found some technical corrections. And so I handed those out in the form of an amendment. I've tracked them through and I think they are pretty technical. So I've given LSO some copies, our session staff. So if you'd like to look at those, but I did circulate that based on what LSO caught. So that would be what you see as a formal amendment. And then I'm guessing this is what you're alluding to.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, questions for Director Nesvik before we maybe ask about the amendments. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Several things that I want to try to get comfortable with this morning as we walk through this. But Director, can you help me remember what does this do to my older hunters in my district that have 18, 19, 20 points on one of these species? There's a lot of fear out there that what we do down here in this session is going to wipe away all their points and then they're never going to get a chance. So can you help me with that piece to start this morning?
Director
Certainly,
Nesvik.
Madam Chair, Senator Landon. So first of all, this bill does not address the issue of preference points. So anybody that has preference points now would keep those. The way that it would affect those hunters that have a lot of preference points if they're non-residents is that their chances of drawing after this bill was in effect would decrease. Right now, as an example, Bighorn Sheep is an allocation of 75% resident, 25% non-resident. If this bill were to pass, that number would change from 25% to 10% for the non-resident. So it would affect non-resident hunters. Now, on the flip side, resident hunters would have a slight increase in their chances to draw one of these licenses. And I don't think I mentioned, Madam Chair, just for the record, it's bighorn sheep, mountain goat, grizzly bear, bison, and moose.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate it.
Further questions for Director Nesvik? Seeing none, did you want to walk us through the amendment sheet that you proposed?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this first amendment above the solid line there, there's a little bit of an explanation there, but essentially the task force intent was not to make this retroactive for anyone other than those folks that are currently in a 5-year waiting period. And let me explain that. So currently, if you draw a bighorn sheep license, after the date that you've drawn that, you're not allowed to apply again for 5 years. So what this amendment would do, it would honor the intentions of the task force, which was to include the once in a lifetime provision for those folks that are currently in that waiting period. Now, for a sportsman who drew 8 years ago and is no longer in that waiting period, and has potentially bought additional or earned additional preference points, this amendment would not apply to them. It would strictly apply to those folks who had received a license within 5 years of whenever the effective date of this bill is.
Questions for Director Nesvik? And I don't know, I think maybe it's because we had a late night and I'm not fully awake yet. I'm having a hard time tracking in the language, that first section that you're talking about, into the bill. Is anyone else? Senator Landon?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I'm kind of the same way, and I just want to make sure we get this right. And so maybe when we start working this bill and moving the language in, let's just make sure we back each other up.
All righty, thank you. Did you want to continue on with the rest of the amendment?
Certainly, Madam Chair. So the second amendment is based on language that was previously struck, and then with one of the amendments that was made in the House, we believe the specific terminology there that describes the gender or the type of license for bighorn sheep, bison, and moose needs to be struck, because this would apply, this particular provision that's contemplated in this page 6, line 21, deals with all of the licenses that would be issued, not just those for bulls or ram sheep.
Questions for the director on that suggestion? I actually followed along on that one, so.
Okay.
Okay, seeing none, and then the last one?
And then the last one is actually, I don't know exactly how to handle this, Madam Chair. We offered this in House Committee, and it passed, but we never saw it show up in the engrossed bill. And so we offer it here again today just to make sure that language gets in. We believe that's important language. And it follows the same logic as what I just described in the last amendment.
Questions for Director Nesvik? That is, Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I appreciate all that you guys have done. I just was going to ask a quick question about the task force and how that went. If everybody was in, I guess, agreement with most of the changes that were made, and just what was your take on that, I guess?
Yeah.
Director?
Madam Chair, Senator Schuler. Yeah, so as far as the task force members, there was, I'm going to estimate at 2.5 to maybe 3 days worth of discussion just on these issues alone that you see here before you today. It was very robust discussion with a lot of different perspectives. There was a significant public outreach component to this effort as well. So task force members conducted town hall meetings around the state at several different locations, and all of the task force meetings were conducted in public. So, and at all those meetings, we had a lot of public testimony as well. And then there was a written comment opportunity for the public as well that occurred between each task force meeting where the public could submit written comments. Now, I will tell you, there certainly was not unanimous support from the public, but I would say that there was significant, a majority support from the public and the task force members that voted on this. At the end of the day, it was a unanimous vote from all the task force members.
Okay, any other questions for our Game and Fish? Other panelists, is there anything you'd like to offer or add to the testimony? None. Thank you. And my apologies, I know Representative Flitner is here. Madam Co-Chair, would you like to address this group? I probably should have led off with you. I apologize for that. Alrighty. And I see Representative Newsom also. Would you like to address? Okay, thank you for being here. Just so I get a sense of who would like to testify, please, can I get a show of hands from people in the audience who would like to speak? And then I'm curious to know how many people have signed up online.
We do have Rusty Bell online.
Okay. So we've got 3 members of the audience. So we'll take those first, and then we'll get to Mr. Bell online. Let's start here with Mr. Schaefer. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Joe Schaefer. I'm a member of the Wyoming Wildlife Task Force. In my day job, I get to work with community colleges and do some pretty cool work here in Laramie County. So thanks for giving me just a few minutes to comment on behalf of the task force. One of the biggest challenges I think we've faced is really understanding and trying to grapple with 2 dynamics, specifically with these big 5 species. One dynamic is the fact that many of our species, these numbers have been decreasing. And so the opportunity that existed 20 years ago is not the opportunity that we have today. And so I think in many ways, the early design of how people apply for and would receive a permit was based on a concept that demand would be relatively stable and supply would be stable as well, maybe increasing. Unfortunately, what we've seen is a significant increase in the demand and the supply of many of these animals decreasing. And as a result of that, the idea that we could eventually give every single person who wanted to hunt one of these wonderful animals the opportunity to do so is just not the reality of today. There is just not a system or a way in which we can do that. And so we've shifted in many ways from having to separate the biological aspect of the supply, which is still important. And you'll see that one of the other recommendations of the Wildlife Task Force was to fully fund the Wildlife Trust Fund to help us with habitat things that could attempt to see these numbers increase. That's very important. We think that that's probably one of the most important things we can do, is because if we can actually get a healthier herd, more animals, we're going to have a better opportunity for people to actually pursue one of these big game species. So that aside, the other piece we're dealing with right now is just equity. So how do we create equity and opportunity, knowing that we probably can't guarantee everybody can get a shot to do that? And so much of the work and the conversation leading up to this was really trying to figure out what's the most equitable approach, hence the response with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we have folks who may never get the opportunity, it's probably not the most equitable if somebody would have the opportunity to do this once, twice, and in some cases we have 3 and 4 times, and so that drove, I think, that decision. The other decision then is just this proportionate allocation between resident and non-resident, and understanding and digging into the economic component of that, which is probably less here, will be more so if we take up the conversation around antelope, deer, and elk. Really what we wanted to look at is what's the best parity, and whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Wyoming is sort of the anomaly in Western states with how it proportions its allocation for these types of permits between residents and non-residents. I know you had late nights and probably early mornings. I did send you an email this morning with a handout that was developed and shared with the task force that shows you state-by-state analysis. And you'll see that the general norm is 90% to residents and 10% to non-residents. And again, I don't know if that's right, wrong, or different, but that has become the norm in Western states. And so that we can, look our resident hunters in the eye and say, the way that we'll treat you as a resident is similar as how our Western states would treat you as a non-resident, to give that opportunity. And so you will hear, I think, both on this issue, because as the good director said, This will for non-residents decrease their probability of drawing, even for those that have been deeply invested in the point systems. To Senator Landon's comment, for those folks in your district that have 18, 19 points as a resident, this will increase their opportunity to do that. So we know there's some issue, with the non-resident perspective of decreasing opportunity. And having hunted in most of the western states and navigated those systems, I've seen that happen and understand where they're coming from. But one of the things that we don't want to lose is the fact that many people choose to live, work, and raise their families here in Wyoming because of the opportunities that exist with our great outdoors. And it's those folks that this will really benefit. So for my daughter, the likelihood that maybe she'll draw a sheep tag, it's going to increase when we do this allocation. And that's important to me and to my family, and also are the things that anchor us in the community. So don't lose sight of the impact to the residents that choose to live and work here because of the great opportunity. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to stand for any questions, but I know you have a full day.
Thank you. Questions for Joe Schaefer? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. President, thanks for your enthusiasm, your efforts, your time. Last year, I really wasn't ready to just what I felt kind of like maybe that we might have been knee-jerking a little bit and wanted to allow the task force to do its work. And so I really do appreciate everybody who served on that. And my question to you this morning is, I hope we're not raising expectation too high here. I think it certainly improves our chances as residents. How much does it? I mean, what kind of percentage did you hear as you worked this effort?
Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Landon, thanks for those comments. Actually, one of the benefits of having such a wonderful community college system is we were able to tap into some of our faculty to do some statistical modeling for the task force. I don't know the percentages off the top of my head. I can tell them to you, but what I will tell you is they go from really, really bad to just really bad. And that's the reality. There is no system that gives great odds. There are systems and likely approaches that you'll see recommendations from the task force downstream, maybe over the interim, that will help shift some of those. But for these species specifically, unless we increase numbers of them substantially, the odds are still going to be tough. Even in the best modeling using points that we think would work, you're talking over a lifespan of a hunter, maybe having a 40% chance of drawing over their lifespan in any given year. They're generally single digits.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Salazar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick question, and if I'm wrong, you please correct me, but so the Summers Amendment, it basically stretches the 90-10 over a 5-year period where it's fully implemented in 2027. My question is that correct? Is my understanding correct? And then my second question is, what do you think about that?
Mr. Schaefer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Salazar, good morning. Good to see you. Thank you for that. So I'll shift and speak just from a resident hunter perspective, because the task force did not take up the issue of a delayed implementation of the 90-10. I think it was the intent of the recommendation that it would be in one shot. And so I believe our good friends with Game and Fish have some of the actual numbers of how that would work and the implementation over, I think, what is 5 years with that. My take on it is I don't know that it makes sense. I don't know that I would personally support it. And for the single reason that the numbers that actually shift are so inconsequential that to actually add the administrative burden to work through that for the actual impact to what I think the interest of Representative Summers was, some individuals in his district from the outfitting industry, to minimize that shift or that impact with the proportion of these tags specifically that are outfitted and the proportion of the numbers that will impact. I think it's adding an administrative burden for little or no real impact.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Follow up?
So, you raise an interesting point. I mean, I was relying on the task force for all interested parties to come together and to reach an agreement. And then when this amendment comes, we're kind of skewing what was a general consensus agreement by the task force. So now we're delaying the 90-10 for full implementation for 5 years. a- And it's my understanding also that it was because of however many outfitters in a particular district. Was it your understanding that the outfitters were at the table at the task force? The assumption was that this was going to be something implemented far more quickly than over a 5-year period. Was that your understanding?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yep. Madam Chair, Senator Salazar, yes, as the good director said, this was a unanimous vote coming out of the task force. That task force has wide distribution of representation of folks from individual sportsmen and women to outfitters on that. And similar to our comments, I think, on other amendments that aren't just clerical or clarifying amendments, what we said is that that's not what the task force advanced. And so what I would tell you is we had unanimous vote to advance the bill before the Summers Amendment. The task force has not had conversation or position on the Summers Amendment.
Further questions for Mr. Schaefer? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony
Thank
today.
you, Madam Chair.
All righty, we'll move back to Mr. Novotny and Mr. Livingston. If you want to testify separately or together, it's up to you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Novotny. I am Head of Government Affairs for the Wyoming Outfitters and Guides Association. You'll recall that we've had this discussion about 90-10 over the years before this committee, and the Outfitters and Guides Association has typically been opposed to moving any 90-10 bill forward. What I can say today for you as our association, which is the trade association of outfitters and guides in the state, is that we've taken a neutral position on this bill. With the caveat that if additional amendments that are made, particularly to the area of deer, elk, and antelope, we will actively oppose the bill. Our neutral position is based on the fact that you have outfitters in the state that have business models that focus primarily on deer, elk, and antelope, and then those folks that are a little more specialized that work in the moose and bighorn sheep areas of hunting. And in reference to the amendment brought by Representative Summers, who is a member of the task force, that is strongly supported by the moose outfitters in the state. Most of those outfitters are dealing with out-of-state non-resident hunters who have 30-plus points, who are in the age range to accumulate 30-plus points, 75 to 80. And I think the intention of the representative was to give them some time to actually be able to draw before they are not physically able to come to Wyoming and hunt anymore. They've made a tremendous investment in those points. If you look at the very positive good that preference points and the money that's generated does for conservation, those folks have contributed greatly to our wildlife assets. So, there is a member, several members that may work as outfitters that serve on the task force, but I do want to be clear. Wyoming Outfitters Guides Association does not have a seat specific on that task force. So I speak as the association, and there are outfitters that serve on that, just to make that very, very clear. So with that, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Novotny? Seeing none, Mr. Livingston, did you want to testify, Commissioner?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Lee Livingston. I was appointed to the task force as a county commissioner. My day job also is that of an outfitter. I visited with a lot of my constituents, both resident hunters and outfitters. When I agreed to be on this task force, I was honored to be asked. I also knew that with many task force, you're not gonna get everything you want. And coming from that viewpoint, the 90-10 for the Big Five was something that we felt would move forward, and from the industry side, is something we could accept and move forward with, not as long as we weren't going after deer, elk, and antelope. But it just kind of made sense to bring it as a bill. It's something that is going to be decided in the legislature. The deer, elk, and antelope are regulation, and so looking at the bill as it was written, we felt that it was not exactly what a lot of outfitters wanted. It was what quite a few resident hunters wanted. So there was a good balance, and we felt it was the right thing to bring forward.
Questions for Mr. Livingston? Senator Salazar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Commissioner, you're absolutely right. You don't always get everything that you want, but it's a good balance.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Livingston?
Madam Chair, Senator Salazar, yes, I feel it's a good balance.
Committee members, additional questions? Senator Guru?
Thank you. Commissioner, I'm just want to make sure I have this, the bill in its present form, you're okay with the work of the commission, or when you just were answering Senator Salazar's question, I'm just trying to make sure we differentiate between the two, or is there?
Commissioner?
Madam Chair, Senator Group, can you restate the question? I didn't quite catch what you were after. Thank
The
you.
bill in its form now with Summers Amendment versus the work of the commission. Your thoughts, I guess, would be the best way to do it.
Mr. Livingston?
Madam Chair, Senator Grew, as a task force, we did anecdotally discuss the waiting period. We did not act upon it. The bill that without Representative Summers' amendment is what we voted on unanimously. I'm back and forth on my thoughts about the amendment. I don't see much to Dr. Schaefer's, to his comments. I don't see how it would, I think it would be a burden for more burden than what it's worth.
You bet. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
testimony today. We'll go to Ms. Johnson, and then let's queue up our online panelist. Welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jess Johnson, Wyoming Wildlife Federation. We have been at all of these task force meetings sitting in the audience, I would say, except for the September 1st opening of archery season that they held that meeting on. But, we can miss one. But what we've seen and what we've been really happy to see is this group of 18 people that have very different opinions or are representing different factions of the hunting and sporting community, and they're all coming together and they're finding the compromise. And whether we're, get everything out of it that we want, what I am confident in is that this task force is taking on an extraordinarily complicated subject, and they're doing it due justice. They have done a ton of public output. They are always open to listening to things that other groups, myself, I know Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation attends a lot of those, Bow Hunters of Wyoming attends a lot of those, and they're always open to listening to us and to hearing what we have to say. So I feel, at least from the sporting NGO side of things, we're feeling very heard and very included into this conversation. I know in history we have had concerns with some of the 90-10 allocation, more on the funding side of Wyoming Game and Fish Department, but we feel that the recommendation that the task force are putting forward is a good way forward and a good compromise amongst everything. So we are really here to support the work that they are doing. And I can stand for any questions.
Questions for Ms. Johnson? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Let's move online. We've got Commissioner Rusty Bell. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Rusty Bell, a Campbell County Commissioner. I'm actually the co-chair of the Wyoming Wildlife Task Force, and one of my day jobs is also a taxidermy. And so thank you for taking time to listen to me. My fellow task force members did a great job, so I won't keep you very long. I will tell you that we don't have a lot of easy tasks that we were given in this task force. I guess that's why it was created, and we appreciate that. Like was Dr. Schaefer said earlier, or Director Nesbitt, it was 18-0 on this, and we did spend, I would say, hundreds of hours cumulatively on this, and took a lot of comment. And so I don't anticipate, with the things that we've been talking about in our task force lately, that we may ever see another unanimous vote. On that, I would like to address really quick the Summers Amendment. We didn't talk about that. That was something that I think during testimony on the House side, we did hear from certainly Mr. Pollard, and we've heard from him before, and some of those other outfitters that deal with the moose and moose outfitters more so in Representative Summers' district. And so as far as that goes, all we can do is tell you and testify to you what the task force did. Certainly Representative Summers, we respect his decisions and really love having him on the task force. And he has to do, and as all legislators do, they have to do what they need to do for their constituents. And you know, I don't think that amendment actually changes what the bill's intent was. It just stretches out the implementation date. And so maybe I'm not a big fan of it, but I also know that legislature, you guys have the right to do what you need to do for your constituents. And so I respect that. And Madam Chair, with that, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Commissioner Bell? Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, I just don't have a question about the bill, but Mr. Bell, maybe I could give you a call sometime and ask you, how do we preserve a bear rug? You know, he's getting kind of old, and so I'll get back, Madam Chairman, I'll get back with Mr. Bell later.
A moment of levity, yes.
All right.
Questions for Mr. Bell? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
With that, committee public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure on? I am tired. The bill has been moved and seconded. Discussion. I want to ask a question though of Mr. Nesvik. So I'm trying to just make sure I'm catching this. And now I'm waking up. The first amendment that you offered to us makes sense about not making this retroactive. But then you said on page 6, line 21, that there was a standing committee that was adopted, but this engrossed version doesn't capture that. Is that correct?
On page 9, line 12 through 16, that third amendment is the language that was offered and it has not been captured in the engrossed bill.
Okay, so the third amendment is what has not, that's already been adopted. It just isn't captured in the engrossed version. Is that correct?
That's what I believe, and I know we offered that amendment in the House Committee and Chairman Flitner's committee, and it was passed.
Okay. Well, I'd look for some guidance. Does anyone have a thought? Because it seems like we should have a revised engrossed copy that's actually, that we shouldn't have to re-amend it twice. I'm sensitive to mistakes for obvious reasons. Senator Landon.
Yeah, good point. So, Madam Chairman, I guess I went ahead and tracked in what the Game and Fish has asked us to consider, and including that third piece of the amendment. And I guess I would say that maybe just to call it safe, maybe our committee might want to track that in and just have it part of the amendment. Our legal staff is going to catch if it duplicates, then we're good to go. But if it's missing somewhere, we can get it in this morning, make sure it's there.
I think that's fair. You know, my good colleague here, who's been a chairman for a lot longer than I have, I think, you know, out of prudence, we'll adopt that. And I would hope that there's no objection among committee members. But I think maybe we should visit with LSO a little bit to see if they advise issuing a revised engrossed copy that actually reflects what the House did. And then if those amendments are no longer necessarily, leave that out of a standing committee amendment. So that's what my request would be on some of that. Senator Guru.
I agree totally, and I know that we all are aware of the deadlines that we're under, and under normal circumstances, it would be easy to say, let's lay this back and for a day or two and get that straightened out. But we all know if we do that, then we effectively kill this bill, and I know none of us want to do that. So I think the good Senator Landon, you know, we have to do our due diligence and make sure that the staff catches up with that error, and we'll get it straightened out. That's all.
Okay, that'll be my priority. Alrighty, so with that, we've got first, let's look at the technical amendment that LSO offered, and I would move this amendment. Let's start working the bill, committee members.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Mr. Nesvik, Director.
Since we're still on before we go to those, I do understand there was a mistake on that First Amendment, and I understand why you might have been struggling to figure that out. I think if you, on the First Amendment on line 5, if you make where it says sheep or, if you make the or blue like an addition, I think that straightens it up.
Understood. Thank you, Director. Okay, so committee members, I would I'd move, you have a copy of a proposed amendment. These are technical corrections that LSO identified. It requires, and this is what I'd move, is this amendment. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye, the amendment's passed. We also have the amendments offered by Director Nesvik. Would anyone like to move those? A moved and seconded by, or moved by Senator Landon, seconded by Senator Schuler. Any comments? Senator Guru?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, let's make sure I understand the motion. The motion is to track in all the amended language that is on a sheet labeled Proposed Amendment HB 43 2022024. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Seeing, Senator Landon?
Chairman, just real quickly, I don't know if we need to track them in. I certainly have it tracked into my my bill, and we could track those, or we could just simply pass this amendment knowing that our legal staff can track it in for us, whatever you're comfortable with, Madam Chairman.
Yep, Senator Guru?
Yes, so that's what I meant. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
Okay. I'm comfortable voting, committee members. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The amendment's passed. We are back on the bill. Any other proposed amendments, committee members? Senator Guru?
Madam Chair, I would like to make one last amendment. On page 6, line 19, starting with the word beginning, strike the balance of that line in lines 20, 21, 22, 23, and on page 7, line 1 through July 1st, 2027, comma. So it would be that sentence would, or on that line 1, the sentence would begin with commission.
It's been moved and been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Just for our clarification, the Game and Fish gave us some language, or Director Nesvik gave us some language about adjusting the word of the use ram, bull on page 6, line 21. Getting rid of this would make that part of the amendment unnecessary, just for clarification. Senator Gru, did you have any comments?
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. I came here today, frankly, as I said, when we were here talking about this bill last year, I was an 80-20 guy, and I was going to stay an 80-20 guy. Not that I didn't care about the task force, but I felt very strongly about it, and felt very strongly because that's what my outfitters told me. They're my constituents, and I was trying to listen to them. But and I watched some of the meetings, and followed it quite closely. And after watching the vote of all the participants in the testimony here today, I'm prepared to go with their findings, and I'm not going to turn that. I know that some of my outfitter friends are still a little uneasy, but that was very compelling to me. The work that you all did, the fact that you all came together, made a profound effect on me, and I'm ready to vote on this bill the way you all put it together.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, not on the amendment, but I would like to ask one final question when we dispense with the amendment. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Question on the amendment?
Madam Chair,
Oh, Senator, Director Nesvik.
I think what I heard you say is that if this amendment were to pass, then the other amendment we offered with clarifying gender would not be necessary, and that, I don't think that's correct. And I'll commit to double verifying that after this, but I don't think we would need to do that because that language was as a consequence of another Summers amendment that was earlier. I think it was on first reading. that struck some of the language that came out of the joint committee, the interim committee.
Okay, well, we have this adopted. I think if we strike this delayed implementation, all of this will get sorted out by LSO, I think is how that might shake out. But I mean, we need them to take a closer look. I am troubled that we missed incorporating standing committee amendments that were adopted on the House side. I really want to get a corrected copy out and then clean amendments. So that's unfortunate, but I really,
And we're committed to work with LSO staff on that too, to see if where the issue was, and maybe it was on our end, but we'll work on that.
we'll get this cleaned up, but just for the committee's awareness, there might be parts of this, what we adopted, if we adopt Senator Gru's amendment right now that are unnecessary, but we'll sort through all of that. So, all right, any discussion on the amendment to pull out the delayed effective date? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The amendment's passed. Committee members, do you have any other amendments you'd like to offer to this bill at this time, Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, just to, trying to anticipate what we might run into up on the floor. Director, I meant to ask you this earlier, and I apologize. Are we okay financially as we do this? What sort of impact are we going to have on revenue to the state? Have we figured that out yet? Because we may be asked that, Madam Chairman, and I just want to be able to defend the bill, and here's what we're looking at, and so thank you, Director. Any thoughts?
Director Nesvik.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Landon, thank you for your thoughts there and being concerned about game and fish revenue. There's so few licenses that the impact is negligible. It's about $200,000 is our estimate. And so, we're comfortable with this change based on all the work that went into it. It's a public policy decision, and that's a consequence of it, but I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Any other comments, committee members? We'll take the roll.
Madam Chair, this is on House Bill 43. Senator Guru. Aye. Senator Landon. Senator Salazar. Aye. Senator Schuler. Aye. Madam Chair Ellis.
And I would like a volunteer to carry this on the floor. I will be in the chair all day today and won't have time to prepare. Who would like to carry this on the floor? I think Senator Salazar, you're going to do a wonderful job of carrying this. I will talk to LSO about making sure that we get the standing committee amendment right. And I will let you know if we do need a revised and gross copy, but be ready, Senator.
We'll be behind you.
Yes, absolutely.
With that, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.